So, in short, if you want a brief description of what has been happening over the last 10 years on the territory of Ukraine, here is a comment, not mine, but somebody Russian. You may consider this Russian propaganda or Russian disinformation campaign or Kremlin bot or Putin spy or something like that, whatever is your choice. But here is a brief description and a different alternative opinion of the following conflict. In short, about why Ukraine deserved what it deserved. For regular and unpunished insults and beatings by Bandera gangs of veterans of World War II, Great Patriotic War, and people who put flowers to the monuments of the Paris soldiers on the territory of Ukraine on the 9th of May, Russian Victory Day in the World War II. For desecration of memorials to the heroes of the Great Patriotic War, and that none of the vandals was charged with any crime for it. For aid to Dudaev Islamist troops in 1994-1996 in the Chechen War, which beheaded living people. For mockery by politicians who are nationalists live on TV over the deaths of children in a school terroristic act in Beslan, and because nothing have happened to them as judgment, and justice didn't follow. For military aid to chauvinistic regime of Saakashvili in Georgia, this is a country in Europe, in 2008, for attacking Russian peacekeeping forces and people of South Ossetia, for burning their own citizens in Odessa city live on TV, and that those who were responsible for burning dozens of people alive in the trade union house in Odessa back in 2014, and that there were no consequences to that. For dealing without trials with opponents of Euromaidan revolution in Ukraine only because they had a different opinion, they have been prosecuted and got away and got killed. For no trial killing of Euro bastards of law enforcement, and which was stated in the special instructions and it was recommended to push them in the back under the wheels of the metro train, to cut them up and shoot at them when they go back from work. This is for law enforcement. Even of those who did not participate in restricting Euromaidan revolution movement. and for taking their kids as hostages. For propaganda of ideas of divisions of SS, Galiciana billboards in its honor were put in the streets of Lvov city and other Ukrainian cities. So those Nazis in Ukraine, specifically of Azov regiment, they basically they were suggesting that all Russians should be killed, all people with brown skin should be killed, and all Jews should be killed. For provocation of hatred between Crimean Tatar people and Slavic people, in hope that two peoples will start conflict with each other and will allow Kiev's politicians to separate and divide and rule. For molestation of children by their gay parades in the Ukrainian cities, for demonstrative burning by the auto nationalists of Orthodoxy icons, for constant voting in General UN Assembly against a resolution which would judge the propaganda of Nazism, that is, the voting that the Nazis will still live on. For mass murder of children, women and old people in Donbass by aerial bombardment and heavy artillery over the last 8 years, for laughing at them with which Ukraine was deafening the tears and cries of these children, for indifference to their deaths from starvation, cold, and lack of medication for the wounded. For development of biological weapons and weapons of mass destruction, which is dirty nuclear bombs, with which help the Ukrainian nationalists were going to reduce drastically Russian population. For organization of machinations using telephone scams, calling to our population, mainly to elderly, pensioners and invalid, in order to scam them to clear out their bank accounts. For organization on our territory of Russia, narco cartels, also for creation of narcotics laboratories and spreading of drugs among our youth. According to information which law enforcement and anti-drug police force obtained after big drug dealers were arrested, this was the state policy of the criminal authorities of Ukraine. For naming the streets, boulevards, parks and stadiums after the names of Nazi criminals. For full destruction destructions of Russian schools, thousands, and ban on use of Russian language for most of population of Ukraine, Russian. For mass information, disinformation campaign, false calls to the schools and hospitals in Russia, which informed on the fake bombs being planted. For artillery shooting at the Russian territory. For black business of the trade of the human organs to the West. For organizing water and electric supply blockage of Crimea. For Thomas, for capturing of churches and for beating up of priests and churchgoers, including tortures and murders. The government system which did such evil doings does not deserve right to live. Nobody cancelled the law of boomerang, unquote. So, according to another military expert, another thing that happened was that the US, in preparation to war with China, they needed to neutralize Russia. So they needed to destroy Russia, basically. Russia needed to be neutralized in order not to ally with China in its military power in the upcoming war, when the US is going to go to war with China. And it's very important to note that they had a deadline, and the deadline was until 2025. So basically what they were going to do is that they needed really badly to build this whole army in Ukraine and Poland. So they will be now building the army in Poland. Basically they have tanks, like 1,000 of tanks now, but they don't have the manpower. They will need to do these things. They would need to instill in the USA obligatory military draft, so every young man of a certain age would have to serve in the military, and there is no way to opt out. That's what they don't want to do, so they want to use other folks' manpower, and this will be Poland, and they also wanted Ukraine, in order to fight with China for them. And the deadline was necessary because they needed to destroy Russia before 2025, because it takes time to build, to manufacture the necessary ammunition, specifically tanks, in order to fight the war. So it will take China, according to their estimates, to build or to manufacture their military equipment, specifically tanks and also others, which will be superior in quantity to that of the United States, and it takes years. That's why this war was quite urgent, and provoking Russia was quite urgent. This is according to this is an opinion of Israel military expert. So in the end of it all, they miscalculated the impact of sanctions and the oil problem and the gas problem and how other nations will act, specifically India, Saudi Arabia, and so on. And also Russia made a miscalculation, and this is why this whole thing happens now in the media, where they proclaim that Russian troops retreated from certain territories because Russian military strategists they thought that a certain amount of military would be enough to hold the positions which are unimportant. But Ukrainians instead decided to join different battalions and attack at the certain villages and small cities. The point is that Russian military command strategists never thought that they would do this because first, after they take this assault force like landing force, military, when it gets in this breakthrough through Russian defense, this needs to be followed after 24 hours with support troops, which in fact they don't have. So they send the assault force there, but they don't have the support for them. So basically they killed a bunch of their military men, Ukrainian military men, in order to achieve this breakthrough, and these were very big numbers of casualties. This is due to a very good Russian artillery, of course. And the next point, they condemn them to death, basically, those that made the breakthrough, because they don't have enough troops to send the support to them. So they basically are deemed to die. Anyways, what Trump wanted in his presidency, he wanted to make friends with Russia against China. That's what he wanted. He wanted alliance with Russia against China. That's what he was promoting. Not destruction of Russia before they move into China. So I don't know why US wants war with China, but that's basically an opinion of an Israeli expert whom everybody trusts here. He said that there was similar things, miscalculation in war, in the war of Yom Kippur, war of Judgment Day, Atonement Day, war between Egypt and Israel, where Israeli forces miscalculated that Egyptian army was ready to sacrifice so much of its manpower in order to gain some unimportant land. Anyways, that's it. Have a nice day.